They say I might as well face the truth, but I am just too long in the tooth. So I'm an OAB and weak need, but I'm not yet quite gone to sea. I may be over the hill now that I have retired, fading away, but I'm not yet expired. Clapped out, run down, too old to save, 1 foot in the grave.
I don't believe it! Yes, viewers, Cars on Television and Film is back, and today we're looking at a very, very oft-requested topic, the cars of 1 foot in the grave. One Foot in the Grave was a sitcom broadcast from 1990 to 2000, starring Richard Wilson as Victor Meldrew, Annette Crosbie as Margaret Meldrew, and then a couple of other guest actors, Owen Brenman as Mr Swainley, wonderful Angus Deayton as Patrick Trench, Janine Duvitski as Pippa Trench, and Doreen Mantle as Mrs Warboys. It was set in a fictional seaside town on the south coast of England. It was filmed at the BBC Television Centre for the interior scenes, and in Dorset and Hampshire mainly, sort of in the sort of Bournemouth and Christchurch areas for the location shooting, and then the final scene was filmed at Shawford in Hampshire, or rather the death scene for Victor, which kind of is a bit weird because the episode that's in is called Things Aren't That Simple Anymore, and that actually is in a flashback structure, so Victor Meldrew's death comes sort of in the middle bit as opposed to sort of the end. So yes, we will actually be going on a couple of visits for these locations as we go through this video. But first of all, let's talk about the main cars that Victor and Margaret use throughout the series. First car that Victor uses is in the opening episode, which is called Alive and Buried. It was broadcast in January 1990. Now, the episode was probably filmed in the summer of '89, because you can kind of see in the bits that are in the location filming that it's definitely summer. So probably filmed the summer of 1989. If you look at the episode, it kind of seems like every car in this fictional seaside town is really, really old. When Victor goes to pick up his car, having had some work, he says Victor Meldrew, the Crimson Avenger, and he has a 1972 Hillman Avenger. It's a 1500 GL. It's a pre-facelift JOU 548L. It only appears in that episode. The fact that the gearbox is sort of destroyed and then he gets arrested for curb crawling is probably something to do with it. In the second series, he has a 1985 or thereabouts. It's difficult to say because the plate looks false to me. Ford Fiesta Popular Plus. The first time you see the car, or rather, it's playing another car. Let me just explain what I mean. There's a joke about TCP in the episode, and a parking valet brings them the wrong Fiesta, C100 TCP, but that's probably just C65 GTB with a false plate, because they wouldn't bother going to the expense of just having two identical cars when we just switch plates around. That episode is called We Have Put Her in the Living Tomb, from the second series, and it does appear in other second series episodes. Now, from the beginning of the third series, there was much more consistency in the sort of car that he had, and it's a car that is actually similar to the one that's used in Keeping Up Appearances. It's not exactly the same because that's a Rover, and this is a Honda Ballade, which was based on the contemporary Civic in the 1980s. It's an 86 Ballade 1.5 EX D679 BLU. It's used in an episode called The Beast in the Cage. It's the first appearance of it. And the last appearance is actually in the Christmas special from 1994, which is called The Man Who Blew Away, where I think it gets stolen, and then they realise that they're not going to get the insurance payout for the car because it suddenly comes back. In the 1988 episode, the 1995 Christmas special, there's a 1988 Ford Sierra Sapphire 2-litre GL, E993 SDH. So he does change cars quite a lot, and there are many episodes where no cars appear at all. It's not that kind of series, it's not that car heavy. It's just that the cars that tends to be in it tend to be quite memorable. The special from 95 is called Wisdom of the Witch. That is E993 SDH. In the 97 Christmas special, he has a different car, but it gets attached to a haunted caravan. You know, what else can I say? It's a 1985 Ford Escort 1.6 GL. It's funny because I've actually driven a Mark II Fiesta. I've driven a Rover 213 from this generation that's based on the Honda Ballade. I've driven a Ford Sierra Sapphire 2-litre, although that was with the twin cam engine rather than the Pinto engine, which is in this one. And I've driven a Mark III Escort. I've driven a lot of these cars. It's quite funny, really. Anyway, I mustn't get sidetracked. The Escort in Endgame, which is the 97 Christmas special, is C366F VW. It seems that the producers were quite keen to not give off the impression at all that Victor Meldrew and his lady wife were in any way rich, because the cars they have are very average and they are relatively old. VW is a suffix from Essex, so that Escort might originally have been supplied by the Ford Motor Company, but it's really impossible to say at this stage. I think that is a genuine plate, actually. In One Foot in the Algarve, which was special, I think, around 1993, they go to Portugal, and the car they hire is a 1990 Fiat Uno 45S. It's the base model Uno, I think, with a 45S, so not very fast. I think that's with a 903cc engine. And yeah, that gets damaged by a Range Rover. The final car that actually is used by Victor and Margaret is a 1999 Nissan Almera 1.6 LX. That's used in the final series from 2000. And actually, the fortune seemed to have gone up in a while because that's a really new car. It was a current car at the time, really. And the registration, to me, suggests that was supplied by Nissan UK. It's T130HWL. So it's a 99 Almera 1.6 SLX. They're very nice to drive, actually, those cars. They often have, I think the sort of Revy twin cam engines in them from the contemporary Primeras, the P10s and P11s. The episode it first appears in is called Tales of Terror. And actually, in that episode, there is a significant plot point involving the car, where they get supplied with a car with registration P1550LE. I'm not going to tell you why that's significant, but they realise that, and Victor goes to sort that out and get the new plate put on the car. But when he returns to the dealership, he gets the wrong Almera, and he gets put on the back of a car transporter, which then sort of goes off, and he wakes up on the top deck of the car transporter. It's just a way that it goes with Victor Meldrew sometimes. Right, let's have our first location visit now, and go to a place called Iford. I call it Iford in the video, but it's called Iford, and it's in Bournemouth. Well, here we are in the Iford area of Bournemouth. It's kind of near Boscombe, and this is 28 Warnford Road. So it says Warnford Road over there. Actually, in the episode in Luton Airport, no one can hear you scream. You see that house on the opposite side. So this is the house, number 28. The gate is actually kind of still there. I'm going to step back a little bit. I am allowed to film the outside of the house. I'm on public property here, so that's not a problem. Just sort of cross over the road here. In the episode, the Eternal Quadrangle, the 5th episode of the first series, you see the Maxi, driven by Margaret's fancy man, as my grandfather would say, just stopping just about here. It's quite a narrow house from the front, and it's really busy around here. The main A35, stop, don't get run over here, it's just back there where all the sort of shops and things are. So I don't know why they chose this particular place. So if we just go forward a little bit, you can see that that's the garden and things on the side, and actually you see a lot of the side door, which is just here. And if I walk down here, we'll just see the place where Victor ties the boys up in one of the episodes, which is in the little shed and garage at the back here. Again, we keep off the land, we don't go on the land, but we can actually point the camera in towards here. And there's the little garage, and that would have been a shed back in the summer of '89 when they filmed here. But it's now kind of like a lean-to. The hedge at the front of the house isn't nearly as big, and this fence is similar but not exactly the same. Of course, it's been replaced since. The reason they stopped filming here, and well, if I were Victor Meldrew, I'd get pretty annoyed about all the traffic noise that's around here and the parking and things, but the house changed ownership between the summer of 1989 when they filmed here and I think the summer of 1990 when the second series was filmed. And so, actually, I think there's a door just there, you can see it, sort of bricked up. So they stopped being able to use it. The new owners of the house put the price up by about 3 times, so they decided to destroy the house, which you see in the episode in Luton Airport, no one can hear you scream. Now, it wasn't filmed here, it was filmed somewhere else. You see the ruins of the house. So they had to go somewhere else for the Meldrew's house from the second series onwards. And we'll go and visit that in a little while. Right, we just about survived that without being attacked by the locals, so we will continue. In the first episode, Alive and Buried, we first meet the character of Mr Swainley, played by Owen Brenman. And he has another dodgy car in comparison with the Crimson Avenger. It's a 1974 Austin Allegro 1500 Super Deluxe, VOT 869N. In 1989, when that was filmed, it would have been a very old car, and of course it's constantly breaking down. OT is a local plate to the Bournemouth area, so, you know, it sort of perpetuates the stereotype that people in Bournemouth, they are there for life and they don't go anywhere after that, and they keep their cars a long time. It's funny, in the episode The Secret of the Seven Sorcerers from the 4th series, he still has a beige Allegro, but I presume that 74 one has died a long time beforehand. I have driven a 1974 Allegro actually on the channel, and they're really not that bad. The one I drove was absolutely lovely. But anyway, so in that 4th series episode, there's a 79 Allegro 1300 Super Deluxe AHC 190V. It's probably meant to be the same car, to be honest. Mr Swainley is introduced in that episode as just someone who's trying to help out sort of elderly people, and seems to have a lot of them in his car, but he keeps having to get out and push because the car is terrible. And later in the second series, he actually moves next door to the Meldrews, which causes Victor great consternation. Mrs Warboys is another character who pops up a lot. She's played by Doreen Mantle, and she has a very consistent car history. In the second episode of Series 2, which is called We Have Put Her in a Living Tomb, She has a 1990 Vauxhall Nova 1.2 Merit. I think that was probably either owned by one of the production crew, but in the summer of 1990, when that series was filmed, it would have been absolutely brand new, because it's a G registration, G970 DPR, a local plate again to that area. So it could have been supplied by a local dealer. I think it was Seaward, who were the local Vauxhall dealer in that area, because that's filmed near Christchurch. So we see that car is replaced by the 1996 Christmas special, and she has another very similar car. It's a 96 Corsa 1.4 Premier, N623 ARX. I don't know why it's got a Berkshire plate. I don't know who owned that. It's not a Vauxhall press plate, that's for sure. And she gets carjacked by Ray Winston. I think you just have to see that to appreciate the genius of something like that. In Tales of Terror, which is the same episode of Series 6 where Victor Meldrew ends up in the wrong Almira, Mrs Warboys has another Corsa. It's a 99 Corsa 1.2 GLS S662 RRW. That's a Coventry plate, actually, RW. So she's very consistent with her cars, and they're all sort of roughly the same colour as well. In the Eternal Quadrangle, which is the 5th episode of the first series, which you would have seen was filmed outside that house in Eyford in Bournemouth, Mr Wharton, Margaret's fancy man, turns up in a 1977 Maxi. We know it's a 77 or later because of the colour. We can't quite read the plate, so we presume it's a false one. With Patrick and Pippa Trench, the people who live next door to the Meldrews from the second series onwards, they have a 1991 Vauxhall Cavalier 2-litre GL. That's used in Christmas specials from 95 and 1996, Wisdom of the Witch and Starbound. There's not very many of those Mark III Cavaliers around. Again, would you believe it? I have driven a Mark III Cavalier on the channel. I'll put links to all these reviews of these cars in the description below. Anyway, I think it's time for us to go and visit the second house that was used in Walkford near Christchurch, and hopefully I don't get mauled by angry neighbours. Here we are on Tresillian Way, near Christchurch. It's actually an area called Walkford that's sort of between Christchurch and New Milton. And the numbering of the roads is really confusing around here, but we're just on the way to number 4. Just have to be quite careful not to speak too loud because I don't want to attract too much attention to what I'm doing, even though it's perfectly legal for me to do that and be around here because I'm not actually owning private property. But number 4 Tresillian Way, which is just down here, is the house. Right, you just have another go at that. People just came out of number 2 and 4. So there is a little side valley down back of these houses. Number 4 is just here. I'm not going to point the camera too directly at it because I just want to walk past. I don't want people to think I'm really strange, even though I am. And that is the house just there. It's a much quieter area around here for filming than it would have been over at Iford or Eyford over in Bournemouth. You just that round sort of there so you could see. So yes, we'll get back to talking about cars now, viewers. It's a little bit less controversial than going location spotting. Well, I just got away with it there, didn't I? Anyway, let's look at some of the final cars I want to talk about. Now, there are other cars that are used in the series. They're not very prominent. These are the ones that stick out to me personally. You might think that you want to see others, and that, you know, there's resources online where you can see them or just watch the episodes. They're actually all on BBC iPlayer for free, which is quite handy. one of the things that I've realised is that there's a van that's used in an episode called The Affair of the Hollow Lady from the 3rd episode of the 5th series, which is driven, I think, by Barbara Windsor, who plays a grocer. Now, that van is also used in the daily episodes of Minder. I think they were made in 1991, something like that. Which is really strange. Back to the old 1983 Ford Transit OYU 116Y. When we talked about the cars of Minder, which is one of the worst episodes I've ever made of anything on the channel, we did mention that. The last series of cars I'm going to mention is something of a plot point, because these cars are all supposed to be owned by the same person. Mr. Atterbury, who's played by John Bird, who's a famous comedian at the time of filming the 5th series. And the idea is that Victor Meldrew ends up with a job as a chauffeur, and the 3 cars that I'm going to mention, they all get destroyed in different ways. First one is a Mercedes S-Class, a W124 variety. This episode is the 6th one of the 5th series, called The Exterminating Angel, and Victor Meldrew ends up having an argument with some rugby players, and the Mercedes gets tipped over. Yes, not advisable to have arguments with rugby players. In order, we go through them of destruction. Then there is a lovely 6th series BMW, a 79, or slightly later maybe an 80, 635 CSI. Unfortunately, Victor decides to pop this car in his friend's garage and doesn't realise his friend's garage doesn't have a floor in it, so it doesn't go very well. You can imagine how that happens. The most interesting one of all, though, is the Jaguar XJ Series 3. I don't know what year that is. All these cars have personal plates on them, or rather fake personal plates, so we don't actually know what year any of these were, but they're all gone anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter. But that gets crushed by a tank. Yeah. And, Victor's always getting into so much trouble with people through sometimes no fault of his own, sometimes the fault of him getting annoyed with people, and sometimes he just deliberately does things to annoy people. And life doesn't seem to go well for him. It doesn't go particularly well, though, one day when he's waiting outside a station near Winchester. And we'll go to that location now, and we'll see what happens. Well, here we are, viewers, outside Shawford Station, which is just near Winchester in Hampshire. I won't actually show you initially the place where Victor Meldrew gets knocked down in the episode Things Aren't Simple Anymore. We're actually going to go to the other entrance to Shawford Station initially, because in 1974 there was a remake of Brief Encounter filmed, and it was in this area actually. So just go and have a look at the front of the station here. This is where Sophia Loren actually gets out of the station and gets into her car and sort of drives back to where she lives. I think the house they use isn't in Shawford, it's in a place called Abbots Worthy, the other side of Winchester. There's a lot of Winchester actually in that film, as well as the New Forest and a place called Brockenhurst, actually the place where they meet, although the sign says Winchester actually on the station itself. So we'll just go down here and we'll walk underneath the railway bridge where it actually happened. I'll show you exactly where it was. So the car actually comes from the direction that this cyclist is coming towards me now. It comes from that direction. Well, you do see a reverse angle of here, which I'll show you in a second. They probably chose Shawford because it's quite a quiet station. The road underneath, you could easily knock someone over if you weren't concentrating, which is what happens in the episode. But so you do see the reverse angle there, And he stands just about here, just about there. The Shawford sign is different now because South West Trains and now South Western Railway have changed their branding at the time, but they don't actually disguise the station name or anything. And he gets hit by the VW Golf that comes from that direction. You kind of see where that Mercedes is just now. You see the parked cars, one's a Rover 200, red one, coming down from that direction. So yeah, Hannah Gordon, playing a character called Linus, comes down from that direction. She's just not quite concentrating. She's thinking about the death of her own husband, and she mounts to pavement and just knocks him down when he's standing there waiting for a lift, and he falls down just about here. And you see his hand and his cap come down. We'll just see this Ford coming down underneath here. You actually see the underside of this particular bridge here, because there are two bridges here at Shawford. And that's it. That's how Victor Meldrew dies, at the end of one foot in the grave. And then Margaret has to come to terms with his death. So there we are, viewers. That was The Cars of One Foot in the Grave, a sitcom that has a theme tune co-written by Eric Idle, of all people. Is it worth watching in 2022? Well, it really depends kind of what you want. It's a sort of seminal thing, and I think that actually some episodes are better than others. Particularly the first series, that's quite sort of variable thing, but once you see him discovering a cat that's stuck in a freezer and thinking that the neighbour who's trapped upstairs in the loft is actually the heating system going off, then it does sort of improve, and you know, it's a sort of classic staple of British comedy. There's an episode actually with the Honda Ballade where they actually get trapped in a traffic jam on a bank holiday weekend. It was filmed in the winter actually, in I think at the Millbrook Proving Ground in Bedford. So it's not a real motorway and the weather's sort of wrong, but you can really see in that episode just how irascible Victor gets and how crazy he is. Funny thing is that Richard Wilson and Annette Crosbie, they're still alive actually. They're still going, which is funny because One Foot in the Grave started over 30 years ago when he was in Australia's retired. So I don't know how they feel about that, but I just find that entertaining anyway. Thank you for watching this episode of Cars on Television and Film. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below. Thank you to all of those who suggested we cover this topic. I do hope that you have found it interesting. And if you wish to join the channel for early video access, then there's a button just beside the subscribe button underneath this video. Thank you ever so much indeed once again.